877-3DP Show, email address, dp@danpatrick.com, Twitter handle at DP Shows. Albert Breer, frequent contributor to the program, the Monday morning quarterback who joins us on the program. Let's start with the second pick in the draft. Let me do what everybody else has done and not really focus on Cam Ward going number 1 overall. Felt bad for him. It's like, oh, yeah, that's great. Okay, now let's get to the interesting stuff. Grade the Cleveland-Jacksonville trade, swapping 2 to 5.
So I would actually give Cleveland an A to be able to get what they got. And we'll see what becomes of, I think the two guys they got for him were Mason Graham and Quinshon Judkins. We'll see what becomes of the players they got from him. But, I think that they were really in a position where they had to reset their roster a little. And they're starting to feel the effects now of all those first-round picks going out the window for Deshaun Watson, where they're aging in certain spots. They're aging a little bit on their offensive line. They've aged on their defensive line. They've aged a bit in their secondary. They aged at running back. And so they had to find a way to reset their roster a little. And this effectively does it. Now, walking away from, one of the two true blue chip players in this draft, I'm sure wasn't easy. But they wind up with Mason Graham and Judkins, and they'll have another first round pick next year. And depending on how good Jacksonville is, that could wind up being a high first round draft pick. We'll see. So I just think, if you want to talk about the logic behind it, it's pretty easy to see what the Browns' logic was. I give the Jaguars a B+, and here's why. I love Travis Hunter as a player. I think on the high end, you're going to get a truly unique, just a unicorn, and I know that's a little redundant, right? A unique unicorn, but you're getting one of these guys that there's never really been one of these before if he hits on all cylinders. But even if he doesn't, you're gonna have a lot of cracks at getting it right because there's so many different things that you can do with him. So I love that for them. My question is, are they in that position yet where they should be taking this sort of swing? In other words, like Liam Cohen, James Gladstone came from the Rams, where they were known for taking these sorts of swings. But when they took these sort of swings, they were on veteran players, and it was a team, and it was with a team that was in position to win right now. And so the question is, do the Jaguars now think they're closer than maybe the general public does to truly competing, to maybe knocking off the Texans in the AFC South, to being a contender? And, obviously a lot of that's going to come down to what Liam Cohen gets out of Trevor Lawrence, but maybe they think that, So if you're Jacksonville and you think you're closer than the general public does, then this move makes a ton of sense because Travis Hunter might be a player that can put you over the top. And then, maybe that pick next year is in the 20s rather than being in the top 10. So we'll see on that.
When did you realize that Shador was falling?
February. I know that sounds crazy. February. I don't know. I was like everybody else in December and January thinking, okay, is it going to be Cam or Shedeur? Being the first quarterback off the board. The more people I talked to when I started to do my research on the draft class, which really, I try to do it all year, but it really kind of gets going once the season ends. The more people I talked to said he's just not a first round talent. Now, people would have said the same thing about Bo Nix the year before. And I think I said this to you guys. I said this a bunch of different places. I would say he could go 3rd or 33rd. And the reason I said that is because I didn't think he was going in the first round, and really what I meant by that was maybe he finds the fit the way that Bo Nix did, and no one's going to argue with where Bo Nix went now because of the rookie year he had. And there was a team that fit him perfectly. He found that team, they found him, and now they live happily ever after. But absent finding that team, he wasn't a good enough physical prospect to go in the first round. He wasn't what you normally see in a first round quarterback. And a lot of people were just whistling by the graveyard on that, but it was what it was all along. And now here's the other part of it, Dan, is if he's not a first round pick and he's got to go find his fit, does it make any sense for him to be thinning the herd? Which effectively is what they were doing, over the last couple of months, the way they were handling some of their meetings. And so, I think that was a mistake. I think another piece of it is, how you view your backup and what you expect from your backup and how most coaches want their backup to blend in with the furniture. And, most coaches would say, you put two quarterbacks in front of them. One's a celebrity, one's an anonymous player, and you say it's going to be the second or third quarterback in your roster. Most coaches will say, "Give me the anonymous guy." It's just the way it is. So I think there were a number of factors in why he fell, but I'd say first round, second round's about talent and performance, and then after that, it's about everything else.
Yeah, and that's what I brought up because my source said that he didn't have a first round grade.
Yep.
And there aren't a lot of quarterbacks who were taken in the second round because you're either first round worthy or you're backup worthy, and that's where you get into the fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh round. And I think that's what happened with Shador is he wasn't Jackson Dart or Cam Ward, but he wasn't going to be Jalen Hurts kind of lingering there in the second round. He was going to be viewed as a guy who was probably going to be a backup quarterback. But did the media get duped here? Because if you consider Mel Kiper, is still shouting from the mountaintops. There are a lot of people who had Shedeur in the first round, and that became a story because now everybody's shocked that he dropped as far as he did. But it almost felt like the media in general was eating what Dion was serving.
Yeah, and it was good for business too, right?
Yeah.
Like Shedeur is a fifth round pick, he's, at that point he's Case Keenum, which is a highly productive, good college quarterback who's not going to be a high draft pick, So, I would say this is sort of a symbiotic thing, where, Shedeur's camp probably felt like it was good for him to be presented as if he was going to be a top 5, top 10 pick, and like that was a lock. Like they felt like that was good for them. Now it wound up being bad for them, because I think it affected a lot of other things, but that was also good for business in the media, wouldn't you say, Dan?
Oh, yeah. Well,
and
look at the ratings.
The draft didn't have a lot of sex appeal, right? Like this, let's call it what it is. Like this was a draft that was heavy on linemen that didn't have very many blue chip guys. Travis Hunter's really interesting, but like, is Abdul Carter as good as he is? Is he driving ratings? No. The fourth pick's an offensive tackle. The fifth pick's a defensive tackle. The seventh pick is an offensive tackle. The ninth pick's an offensive tackle. Like something's got to drive the boat here, And I think it was a part of it is it's good for business for all of us. I'm not exempt from it either. I wrote a lot about Shedeur, and I talked a lot about Shedeur, and I went on TV a lot about Shedeur over the last 2 months. It was good for business that way.
Talking to Albert Breer, the Monday morning quarterback. Help me understand the Steelers quarterback room right now.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty good tell that they feel good about where they stand with Aaron Rodgers right now, and I think Kirk Cousins would loom as sort of a fallback option if Aaron Rodgers, if that doesn't play out the way that it does. But I think we should listen to what Aaron said too, which is, I've got some personal things that I'm trying to work out. And you wish he had said that at the beginning because it probably would have, saved a lot of the noise from getting out there over the last couple of months. But he did say it, and I think we can all respect it and all respect like whatever he's going through in his personal life. And I think in that case, like, he's going through that in his personal life. Well, maybe it would make sense then that he would be waiting on signing with a team because, the minute he signs with the Steelers, if he signs with the Steelers 3 weeks ago and says, okay, I'm going to handle this personal matter and then I'm going to show up. Well, what does the narrative then become? Well, he's not here for the offseason program. OTAs are starting. He's not here for that. The veteran minicamp, is it going to be a circus because of that? I could see where, if he, like, again, taking it at face value, he's handling a personal matter here. I could see where it probably makes the most sense for everybody to take a step back a little bit and say, like, it just doesn't make sense for us to sign you right now because it's going to turn the volume up on everybody. And we don't need that right now. You don't need it. We don't need it. Let's just let sleeping dogs lie. And then, I think as far as the Kirk Cousins thing goes, where we are right now with that, like the Cleveland Browns, which are the most logical suitor, they have a full quarterback room right now. The Vikings just traded for Sam Howell. And I think under certain circumstances, the Vikings would have considered bringing Kirk back as a backup. And so, like, the Steelers can kind of sit here and say, okay, like, well, if something goes wrong in the Aaron Rodgers situation, we could still revisit Kirk Cousins. So they've got a couple options out there for themselves. And, then I know, like, I don't see them going into the season with Mason Rudolph as the starter, but at least they've got a guy they've got experience with there.
What do you do if you're the NFL to the Atlanta Falcons when the phone numbers got out, and your defensive coordinator's son is videotaping him and his friends calling these draft picks.
I mean, I don't know. In some ways, I think we all did that. We all did stupid stuff when we were that age. So I hate to kill the kid. You know what I mean? Like I probably would have thought it was hilarious when I was 20 years old too. You know what I mean? Like so, like I have sympathy for Shador in this situation. I also, I also see this as like this isn't a capital crime. Now there is a security issue. So that's something the NFL has to clean up. How these things get out, there's a million different ways it can happen. That it was a burner phone, I think obviously points to, okay, like, well, if he only had this phone over the week leading up to the draft, then it had to come from somewhere. And, I think this is, if it did come from an NFL email, then the league office has to look inward too and how they're distributing those things. And are they being a little careless about distributing them? I think we have to be open to the idea that it's an honest mistake. If you leave a tablet open, and which is what they said, I think, right? Was it an iPad?
Yeah.
If you leave a tablet open and your kid walks by it, I mean, again, is that a capital crime? It's sloppy, but like it's not a capital crime, So, it's a weird story. It's a weird thing, but there's just a huge part of me that looks at this and says, like, let's just all move on. This is so stupid. It doesn't, I mean, I think Shedeur is in stable condition right now, I would say, right? After what happened on that phone call.
The Niners paid George Kittle.
Yeah.
I didn't know if maybe they were going to do it in reverse order and pay Brock Purdy, and then you pay George Kittle. But what do you make of the Niners making George Kittle the highest paid tight end?
Well, I think it's like sort of a acknowledgement of who he is as a player and what he's done for the organization. And as a guy who's going to turn 32 years old in October, we still trust you. We still trust that you're going to do everything you need to do because it's going to get harder as you get older to get yourself ready to be one of the best tight ends in football. Now on paper, what this really is it's a bump. And you're going to be on the team in 2026. Like he knows he's going to be on the team this year. This essentially assures that he's going to be on the team in 2026. So he gets a nice pay raise. You're going to be on the team the next 2 years. And then after that, we'll see. It's trumpeted as a 4-year extension. It does not mean he's going to be on the team when he's 38 years old.
Yeah.
So, I think as much as anything else, this is sort of the gold watch deal. You know what I mean? Like this is the deal where you say, we love you. You're going to be a part of our organization forever. You've got a legacy here. We're going to reward you one last time. We're going to give you the security of knowing you're going to be here for the next 2 years, and we'll see after that.
The Bill Belichick book, where Robert Kraft is not even in the acknowledgments.
Mm-hmm.
What do you make of that exchange that he had with the Sunday morning, the CBS morning show?
Well, I mean, was it Georgia Tech against Cumberland in the was that the 222-0 game, right?
Yeah.
Like I would say that would be sort of the same matchup as CBS News against the people who are running Belichick's interview there. If that makes sense.
Well, okay, wait a minute. Now, his girlfriend's job, I would think, is to troubleshoot. She heads up his PR.
Yeah.
You have to have, let's go through the potential questions you're going to get, Bill.
Right.
I'm going to ask you the questions, and then we are going to cobble together an answer.
Yeah.
Bill seemed shocked, and then he also, when they followed up by asking,
And if it is true that the reason this got out and the reason they shot they shot her off camera is because it was nonstop interrupting and there was a real problem for them. Well, that's not the way like a professional in that situation acts. Like if you have like a publicist or a PR person who's handling that for you, I mean, you know this as well as I do, Dan. You've sat down in these like sorts of interviews before. I mean, they're usually very professional, and if there is a PR person or a publicist there for the person who is being interviewed, that person's not interrupting. That person has an idea of everything that's going on with everybody there. In a lot of cases, has a relationship with the network. You know what I mean? Like, so they're working through all of that stuff together. But
Bill should have been prepared for that question. That's the point.
Yeah, and I that part of it is.
Even him getting fired, Albert, he didn't even have an answer for that because they let him go. And he goes, mutual. Mutual.
Yeah. Yeah. And, but that part of it, I'm not sure he would have answered that differently. Like did that not feel to you like a little bit of knife twisting? Like, with Kraft, like it just felt to me like I know what he doesn't want to hear here. So I'm gonna twist the knife. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
I mean, and we know the guy knows how to hold a grudge, right? I mean, so it felt to me like just watching it and knowing Bill and having been around professionally around Bill for the last 20 years, like he generally doesn't say a lot of things by mistake, and that correct answer was like basically like, yeah, I did it. And I meant to do it, and I did it for a reason.
She just has to be better. If you're gonna be his sounding board, you have to say to him, they're gonna ask you these questions.
Right.
Yeah, you're preparing for a deposition.
Well, and if I'm in the room, they're gonna ask about me, right?
Well, I'm sure, but she could have been hands off from the standpoint of this is a book about Bill and winning. This has nothing to do with her, their relationship, or North Carolina.
Right.
But now, would I still ask? Because she's interrupting, I probably would have said, why don't you come over here and sit down with us? Because you're disrupting the interview. Either be in the interview or get out of the room.
Right. It also sort of makes Bill look weak, doesn't it?
Yes,
I mean, it does. Like we can call it what it is. Like if you're talking about like making him look good, that wasn't happening either, Like let him answer the question.
He's the most prepared coach we've ever had.
And you don't think he knew that could be asked? Of course he did.
Of course he did.
I mean, like if he's parking her 10 feet from the camera, like then he has to know, like they could ask about that. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. But they could ask about that. So,
isn't it absurd that we're actually talking about this? If I would have said to you, hey, 3 years ago, hey, you know what's going to happen with Bill? He's going to meet this girl on a plane, and he's not going to get back in the NFL. He's going to leave the Patriots, and he's going to coach at North Carolina. And we're going to talk about how she's running his life.
Well, you look at it, it's so interesting.
And those pictures on the beach where they're posing, like.
We had that thing like Brady, Kraft, Belichick for all of those years and everything else. And who's the one that's like winning that? Again, I guess that's another Georgia Tech versus Cumberland, right? Like is Brady is now a part owner of the Raiders, was just part of hiring a head coach and a general manager, and the other two guys are sort of engaged in this. It's just it is
crazy.
It feels to me like the theater of the absurd. I mean, it just like if we can all be honest about this, it's like there's no way 5 years ago if you had told me that this is where we would be, and 5 years ago is when Brady walked out the door. If you had told me like this would be where we would be left 5 years later, I would have said that sounds like a Saturday Night Live skit. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Good to chat with you. We'll talk to you in the offseason. Thank you again, Albert.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
That's Albert Breer. He is the Monday morning quarterback. We'll take a break. We're back after this.